January 7th. We're going to test on decold Hemp Hearts. We're going to be running this material. It's vacuum sealed. Okay. Yeah, it looks mostly dehulled. Looks like just straight hearts. And we're going to try and remove the oil to increase the protein content coming out of the screw press. To remove the oil, we're using steam to hopefully assist us while we're pressing to separate out the fiber from the oil itself. This is our test oil that we're using. We're using looks like about 60 psi steam. The steam runs through a manifold and injects into here. And this is where we'll convey the hemp hearts up into the screw press, into the hopper. In our warm hemp hearts into here and press out oil from the fiber, which will come over from here. So we'll use a cone to go ahead and supply the back pressure in order to make that separation happen. And let's begin feeding. Okay, so we're starting to get some hemp hearts going into our screw press. Take a look at the inlet hopper in there. So those hemp hearts have been steamed along the conveyance of the screw conveyor. Yeah, we're at about... Okay, so we're beginning to beat oil. If we look at the screen, we're actually getting a nice, clear-looking oil coming out through there. So it is mixing with the water. So we have steam going in there to heat it and help it get the oil out. But if we see between the wedge wires, we are getting some fiber on our last stage of compression there. We have our press cake coming out. Plug smiley form. So I just increased the pressure to 35 psi. So we're exerting 35 psi on this cone as our back pressure. It's being utilized through the actuating arm that we have on top of the press. So we slowed the press down significantly to match the rate that we're running it through the conveyor, the dosing conveyor. So we're just barely keeping up now. And what that's going to do for us is reduce the fiber downstream. And we still see a decent separation. We've got quite a bit of fiber building up on the outside, but our cake still looks a little oily. Let's go ahead and squeeze it, see if we get anything out of it, and get some oil between my fingers. Okay, we're looking at the temperature where the hemp hearts fill the cavity of the press. I don't think we're filling it all the way over there yet. But we're at about 115 on that. The oil coming out, given it's been dripping for a while. We can see some of the two phases separating out here. You see the water and the oil. And it looks like the fiber is sinking, so that might be a good thing. Let's take a look at the temperature of the press cake. The press cake's coming out just at about 100 degrees. A little bit all over the place. Okay, about 120. So we slowed the press down significantly so we can match the rate that the dosing conveyor that we're steaming the hemp hearts in. We're running at 3 1/4 RPM on the screw press. The doser is running 5.5 RPM. Okay, so we are getting some more fiber through the screen, but we are getting a distinct oil layer on top. We'll be able to see that in the bucket. We'll get a close up of the bucket here. So that's our collected press liquor we have so far. As I predicted, the fiber is sinking to the bottom, which will help remove it from the oil, freeing up the oil. We have our cake coming out. Let's see what temperature it's coming out at. So we're coming out at about 125, 126. Let's take a look and see what temperature we have inside the hopper going into the screw press. So we're just under 160. We're at about 153, 155 it looks like, the dosing conveyor. Trying to keep that hole plugged so that steam stays in. We can get more heat transfer. When we're looking at the press, we see a lot of clear oil coming out on the front end over here, but we don't see very much coming out over there. This is where we're entering into the screw press, so it's going to be hotter over here. If you notice, we're at 152. When we're at that temperature, it seems to give itself up a lot better. Over here, where it's not coming out so well, we're only at 127, 125. So sometimes with our presses, in these bars we have up here, we'll do a steam injection manifold. We can't do that now because we're using our steam connection for the dosing conveyor, but that could be a potential option. So it would go in there just like that, and it would keep the hemp hearts hot so that we could see this coming out at all points of the press. So this is the fiber that's collected on the screen. Now sometimes we take material and we double press it. If you were to double press this, it seems like it would separate out quite well. Let's try that again. Let's get some fiber in the hemp on the screen. There we go. Blue oil just gives itself up. So we've begun to feed in our press cake. So our press cake does still have some oil in it. So we're going to double press it, pressing it a second time and seeing if more oil separates out. We're beginning to feed it now. We're running at 60 hertz on the VFD, and that's about 22, 23 RPM. So this is the screen for our double pressing. We're getting a few drops of oil out, but separation's really minimal. We've cut the speed in half from before, so we're running at about 11, 12 RPM now. You see our press cake coming out. Let's try and see if we can squeeze some oil. See a little bit of oil forming between my fingers there. So the cake definitely still has oil in it.